We're all familiar with the term LGBTQ, and today we are talking about the letter Q, often standing for the word queer. It's a term that has a rich and complex history that has been evolving for literally centuries. Hi, I'm Willow with OutCenter, and I hope that we can answer many of your questions about this word on No Silly Questions, our series on LGBTQ FAQs and fast facts. There are no silly questions, so ask your own at outcenter.org/questions. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the word queer comes to us from a 16th century Scottish word to mean strange, different, or off-center. By the 1780s, though, the word evolved to have a not-so-good connotation. Something queer wasn't merely different, but it was suspicious or wrong in some way. The term did, of course, evolve to become a slur. According to the National Archives, and I quote, during the infamous 1895 trial of Oscar Wilde, one of our favorite gay icons, a letter from the Marquis of Queensberry detailing his disgust at Wilde's relationship with his son, Lord Alfred Douglas, was read aloud in court, in which he refers to Wilde and other homosexual men at the time as snob queers. Like many slurs, however, those who were labeled with it began to reclaim the title to take away power from those that would use it as a bad word. In 1990, an HIV/AIDS activist organization called Queer Nation began. Since then, and since around that time, the term became more widely adopted, and references to it are now popular in popular media, such as the TV show Queer Eye. It should be noted that for many terms that are reclaimed, even this one, there are some folks that don't prefer it. For folks that were doing activism pre-reclamation, the term queer can be associated with some of these negative things like abuse and discrimination and bullying. So it's important to know that this term may have baggage for some. But let's talk about how the term is used in a positive way today. Queer has become a very broad term to describe one's sexual orientation and or gender identity. The term is helpful for several reasons. First, because the term is very fluid. It rejects binaries such as gay or straight or male and female. This provides space for folks who are floating between different identities or attractions, or if they're questioning these things. And for some formulations of the acronym LGBTQ, the term questioning can stand for the letter Q, not just the word queer. Another advantage is that it's meant to be unifying for a wide spectrum. Queer can be used to describe anybody in the LGBT community, even folks that don't make it into the acronym. Further, some folks find some labels work exactly for them and exactly describes their experiences or their attractions. For others, however, it's a little bit more, harder to put your finger on. And so the word queer kind of makes other people know that you're in the LGBT community, even if there's not a specific label that you think fully applies to you. But it's saying, hey, I'm here, I have a similar kind of experience, and I want to be involved. The word queer can describe a sexuality, it can describe an identity, but it can also be used in another context. Maybe you've heard about queering a historical story. Instead of assuming heterosexual or cisgender social norms, you can reread about an event that happened or two people together in the past and queer it, right, to get a more accurate retelling of what was going on in that particular time. In a similar way, one might queer theology, right? So they could take maybe a religious practice that wasn't affirming to LGBT people, and through that queering of that thing, they can understand it in a more complete way that's more open to everyone. Or maybe you've heard of queer spaces, like a coffee shop, for instance, that's super welcoming of LGBT folks and just has that LGBT vibe. Well, that's really the very short but very long history of the term queer. It was just a very sort of neutral word. It evolved to become something kind of nasty, but then was brought back by queer people to say, we're here, we're queer, and we're not going anywhere. The term can also be used to describe one's identity or sexual orientation. Things can be queered, that coffee shop or particular fields of study or history. I love how broad this term is and how inclusive this term is. I like to use the term because it's a shortcut. I think the word fits very well for what I try to communicate. And I also think that the word queer comes with a certain political posture as well. The word queer evolved from this revolutionary way of being to stand against power for people that wanted to put LGBT people away, right? To not affirm of these identities. And people brought this term back as a way of saying, nope, we're actually going to stand for who we are. So I like that there's this political and social and activist dimension as a part of the word too. I hope this serves as a very brief introduction to this very helpful term. If you're exploring who you are and your identity, I recommend trying on this label and seeing how it feels. Also, if you're trying to make sense of the world around you, look at some queer theory, queer history, queer literature. I love the fact that there is this fun term that we can use to identify media or things in the past or ways of thinking that have this particular LGBTQ understanding attached to it. If you are enjoying and learning from this content, I would so invite you to be a part of our community, follow us on social media, and if you want to ensure that these keep on going, we invite you to become giving partners with us. Just head over to outcenter.org/donate, and we would love to receive your support so we can keep talking about queer things and queer culture.